Good morning, everyone. Today's topic is maxillary sinus. Can everybody see the screen? So today's topic is the maxillary sinus. It includes the definition, developmental aspects, structure and variation, microscopic features, functional importance, clinical considerations, and various important questions related to the university exam. Coming to the definition, the maxillary sinus is pneumatic space that is lodged inside the body of the maxilla and that communicates with the environment by the way of middle nasal meatus and the nasal vestibule. The developmental aspect of maxillary sinus includes the initial development of maxillary sinus follows a number of morphogenic events in the differentiation of the nasal cavity in the early gestation. First, the horizontal shift of the palatal shelves and the subsequent fusion of the shelves with one another and with the nasal septum separate the secondary oral cavity from two secondary nasal chambers. This modification presumably influences further expansion of the lateral nasal wall in that the wall begins to fold, thus three nasal conchae and three subjacent meatuses arise. The inferior and superior meatuses remain as shallow depression along the lateral nasal wall for approximately the first half of intrauterine life, and the middle meatus expands immediately into the lateral nasal wall. Because the cartilaginous skeleton of the lateral nasal capsule is already established, expansion of the middle meatus proceeds primarily in an inferior direction, occupying progressively more of the future maxillary body. Related to the development, coming to the developmental anomalies, it includes agenesis, that is complete absence, aplasia, that is altered development, and hypoplasia, that is underdevelopment of the maxillary sinus. These anomalies can be conchoid atresia, cleft palate, high palate, septal deformity, absence of concha, mandibulofacial dysostosis, malformation of the external nose, or the pathological conditions of the nasal cavity as a whole. The supernumerary maxillary sinus. It is the occurrence of two completely separated sinuses on the same side. This condition is most likely initiated by the outpocketing of the nasal mucosa into the primordium of the maxillary body from 2 points, either in the middle nasal meatus or in the middle and superior or middle and inferior nasal meatuses respectively. Consequently, the result of two permanently separated ostia of the sinus. Next is the structure and the variation of the maxillary sinus. The maxillary sinus is subject to a great extent of variation in shape, size, and mode of developmental pattern. Usually, the sinus is described as four-sided pyramid, the base of which is facing medially towards the nasal cavity and the apex of which is pointed laterally towards the body of the zygomatic bone. The four sides are related to the surface of maxilla in the following manner. Anterior, related to the facial surface of the body. Inferior, to the alveolar or the zygomatic processes. Superior, to the orbital surfaces. And posterior, to the infratemporal surfaces. The four sides of the sinus, which are usually distant from one another medially and converge laterally and meet at an obtuse angle. The identity of each of these four sides is somewhat difficult to discern, and the transition of the surface from one side to another is usually poorly defined. Thus, comparison of the sinus space to geometrically well-defined body is of theoretical value. The base of the sinus, which is thinnest of all the walls, presents the perforation, the ostium, at the level of middle nasal meatus. In some individuals, in addition to the main ostium, two or many more accessory ostia can be present that connect with the sinus with the middle nasal meatus. So in most of the cases, the maxillary sinus opens through the ostium into the posterior third of the hiatus semilunaris in the middle nasal meatus. In the course of development of the maxillary sinus, often pneumatizes the maxilla beyond the boundaries of the maxillary body. Some of the processes of maxilla consequently become invaded by the air space. This expansion referred to as the recesses. The occurrence of zygomatic recess usually brings the superior alveolar neurovascular bundles close proximity to the space of the sinus. The occurrence of zygomatic recess usually brings the superior alveolar neurovascular bundles into the proximity with the space of the sinus. The frontal recess invades and sometimes surrounds the content of the infraorbital canal. The alveolo-palatine recess reduces the amount of bone between the dental apices and the sinus spaces. Later in the course of the development, most often it pneumatizes the floor of the sinus adjacent to the roots of the first molar and lays open to the roots of second and first premolars in that order of frequency. The fully developed alveolar recess is characterized by 3 depressions separated by 2 incomplete bony septa. The anterior depression or fossa corresponds to the original site of premolar buds, the middle to the molar bud, and posterior to the third molar bud. Another important aspect of the maxillary sinus is microscopic features. The sinus is lined by mucosa which is firmly bound to the underlying periosteum. The epithelium is pseudostratified, columnar and ciliated. It is derived from the olfactory epithelium of the middle nasal meatus and therefore undergoes the same pattern of differentiation as does the respiratory segment of the nasal epithelial proper. The most numerous cellular type of the maxillary sinus epithelium is columnar ciliated cell. In addition, apart from this, the basal cells, columnar non-ciliated cells, mucus-producing flask-shaped secretory goblet cells. Ultrastructurally, a ciliated cell encloses the nucleus and electrolucent cytoplasm with numerous mitochondria and enzyme-containing organelles. The basal body, which serves as the attachment of the ciliary microtubule to the cell, are characteristic of the apical segment of the cell. The cilia are typically composed of 9 plus 1 pair of microtubules, and then they provide the motile apparatus for the sinus epithelium. By the way of ciliary bitting, the mucus blanket lining the epithelial surface moves generally from the sinus inferior towards the nasal cavity. The beating pattern and the direction are genetically programmed. Coming to the goblet cell, it displays all the characteristic features of the secretory cell. In its basal segment, the cell is occupied in addition to the nucleus, the cytocavitary network. Then from the Golgi apparatus, the zymogenic granules transport the mucopolysaccharide towards the cellular apex and finally release the material onto the epithelial surface by exocytosis. Another important structures are the subepithelial glands. They are present below the surface of the sinus, which is provided with the mixed secretory product, that is the secretion consisting primarily of water with small amount of neutral nitrous, non-specific lipids, proteins and carbohydrate, along with mucus secretion consisting of compound glycoproteins or mucopolysaccharides or both from the subepithelial gland. These are located in the subepithelial layer of the sinus and reach the sinus lumen by the way of excretory duct after the ducts have pierced the basal lamina. Apart from that, myoepithelial cells surrounds the acini composed of either both secretory cells or pure population of cells of either secretory type. As you can appreciate in this figure, A and B shows the serous and the mucus acini. The electron micrograph illustrates respectively a thin section of several serous and mucus secretory cells taken from the human submucosal maxillary gland. Coming to the functional importance, the sinus is regarded by some of an accessory space to the nasal cavity, occurring only as a result of inadequate process of ossification. In contrast, other reports the functional contribution of maxillary sinus in many aspects of olfactory and respiratory physiology. Apart from all, it protects the internal structures, particularly the brain, probably the eyeball as well, against the exposure to the cold air. The other contributions were paranasal cavities to the resonance of voice, lightening of the skull weight, enhancement of the faciocranial resistance to the mechanical shock, and the production of bactericidal lysozyme to the nasal cavity. These are reviewed by detail in by Planten and Biggs. Coming to the clinical considerations of the maxillary sinus, it includes the close proximity of the roots of maxillary first molar and to a lesser extent the maxillary first and second premolars to the sinus floor is of importance to the dentist. Infections in the periapical area of this teeth erodes the sinus, causing sinusitis, and in the process causes a communication between the oral cavity and the nasal cavity, which is known as oroentral fistula. Surgical procedures to retrieve a broken fragment of a root of a difficult extraction may also result in the oroentral fistula if adequate care is not taken. Extensive vascular connection between the sinus and teeth may cause infection to spread from the teeth to the sinus and vice versa. Sometimes the pain due to sinusitis can also be experienced involving the maxillary posterior teeth, as superior alveolar nerve is in close approximation with both the maxillary posterior teeth and the sinus. Malignant tumors from the sinus like squamous cell carcinoma may erode the floor and presents as loosening of the teeth or cause the gingival bleeding, often leading to the erroneous diagnosis and the treatment. This was all about the maxillary sinus. There are few important questions which can be asked and important from the exam point of view, which includes the anatomy of the maxillary sinus, histological features, and the applied aspect and the functions of the maxillary sinus. Thank you.